I'd like to now introduce our guest speaker for the evening. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Houssin. He's the Director of Sustainable Energy Policy and Technology at the International Energy Agency in Paris. Great city, by the way. Prior to accepting his current position, he served as Director of Energy Markets and Security and Head of the Office of Oil Markets and Emergency Preparedness. You almost have a title long enough as Mike Marsh in our organization. He's in charge of everything. So, before joining the International Energy Agency, Mr. Houssin was Managing Director of BGRM, the French Geological Survey, where he was involved in carbon capture and geothermal energy. Mr. Houssin is the former Director of Energy and Mineral Resources in the French Ministry of Economy and has had several positions in French Ministry of Industry, dealing with financial and European affairs. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Houssin.
Mr. Minister, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this nice introduction, and it's truly a pleasure for me to be here at this very important event and to enjoy the hospitality of SaskPower and of Saskatchewan, and to be there in this beautiful facility. Actually, without exaggeration, this is a momentous point in the history of the development of carbon capture and storage, and I thank you for inviting the International Energy Agency to be part of it. As the Director in charge of Sustainable Energy Policy and Technology, I'm particularly pleased to bring best wishes from the IEA to Canada and especially Saskatchewan. Saying welcome to Battery Dam 3 is a great privilege for me. Looking at CCS globally, I think it's safe to say that we've gone through several relatively dry years. Positive news and major announcements have been few. That makes this a moment that governments, industries, and many other stakeholders around the world have long been waiting for. This event truly marks a new era for carbon capture and storage. As you know, what we are witnessing is the startup of the world's first large-scale power station equipped with CCS. The generating unit will operate continuously, delivering reliable, low-carbon electricity to consumers in Saskatchewan and beyond. Not only is it the first large-scale power station with CCS, it is also a retrofit. You're giving an old power station a new life, and it's a model of the type of retrofit that will have to become commonplace in many countries as they address the challenge of decarbonizing power generation. On this occasion, the IEA also wants to extend its congratulations to the main parties involved, SaskPower and its industrial partners, the Government of Saskatchewan, and the Canadian federal government. Together, you're seeing the result of a great effort. Around the world, Canada is known for a great many things, like a vast and beautiful wilderness, long cold winters, and of course a passion for ice hockey. But what we're seeing now is also Canada becoming known as a global leader in CCS. You've already demonstrated that enhanced oil recovery and CO2 storage can be combined through the Weyburn project right here in Saskatchewan. You're also developing CCS as a solution to reduce the greenhouse impact of the oil sands next door in Alberta, and at the same time implementing world-class regulatory frameworks for geological storage. And now you're showing the way with capturing CO2 emissions in the power sector. Clearly, Canada is in the vanguard of nations developing and implementing CCS technologies. I can only hope that these efforts continue and are reinforced over time. Unfortunately, we have endured a rather difficult period for CCS globally in recent years. There's been more skepticism than positive news, but I think we're witnessing a slight change for the better right now. Boundary Dam is here. The Kemper project in Mississippi will also come online sometimes in early 2015. Gorgon and Quest are advancing their construction, and Petra Nova in Texas has just entered construction. We are seeing actual projects and we are seeing practical experience accumulating. It is of great importance for CCS to be able to show more of this practical experience happening on the ground. I'm confident that the months and years ahead will be better. We have more CCS now than 5 or 10 years ago. In addition to projects, we also know the technology better than we did before. We have made progress in R&D and gained tremendous experience with dozens of pilots across the world in various sectors. You all know this, but it must be repeated for the wider public. CCS is not science fiction. Of course, a lot remains to be done, and changes must come from two directions. We need better policy on one hand, but we also need better technology. Globally, we simply need to do more to get CCS to advance faster than it has to date. This means better and more supportive policy frameworks, continuing our R&D efforts, tackling legal issues, and gaining more public acceptance. Governments, especially many relevant ones also represented here today, have an absolutely critical role to play. You can create incentives, you can ensure laws and practices are in place to ensure safe storage of CO2. You can implement policies that put production from CCS-equipped plants on equal footing with that from other low-carbon energy technologies. And at the IEA, we outlined a set of 7 key actions for the next 7 years in our recent CCS roadmap. I don't want to go into these details this evening, but I'd like to offer our roadmap as a good guide for all countries who contemplate CCS. And on top of all the good advice, I'm happy to point out that the great front cover picture of this roadmap is, of course, one from Boundary Dam. Creating political support for CCS is easier said than done. My current assessment of political support for CCS is that CCS has become a political orphan in recent years. Obviously, we are at this event today because Canada and Saskatchewan are exceptions to this. But unfortunately, in many countries with considerable potential for CCS and even much relevant expertise, the political backing and active championing of CCS by policymakers has slowed down or even disappeared, and this must change. Then there is the need to improve technology. The IEA remains confident that CCS can be a cost-effective option in our fight against climate change. This has been shown through various analyses of cost per ton of CO2 abated or levelized electricity production. Now we need to actually prove this in a sufficient number of large installations. Talking is not enough, it must be seen. Of course, that's why a new large-scale power sector project, such as Boundary Dam, is vitally important. It helps accumulate real-life understanding of the cost of CCS on power. We have also noted the views that SaskPower has on how much they could cut investment costs in the future just on the basis of experience of this first plan. That is an impressive and very positive message which deserves to be repeated. As pointed out by the IEA Executive Director, Maya van der Hoeven, in a statement she made this morning to commend the grand opening of Boundary Dam 3, CCS is the only known technology that will enable us to use fossil fuels and also decarbonize the energy sector. As fossil fuel consumption is expected to continue for decades, deployment of CCS is essential. And she added, getting Boundary Dam up and running is a great example of how Canada is a leader in CCS. Let me finish by stressing that the International Energy Agency is not alone in having a very keen interest in the experience you will gain from the Boundary Dam project. Indeed, the interest in your work will be global. So on behalf of the IEA, I wish you every success in showing the world that large-scale capture of CO2 from a power station is not science fiction, it is indeed reality. Thank you very much for your attention and enjoy the evening.